welcome to Turn the Page, the official podcast of the Syosset Public Library.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Turn the Page. I'm your host today, Jen, and today I am joined by the author of a debut mystery, of other things, but a mystery that we are here to discuss as well, who has a fascinating career, and I'm so excited to have this conversation. So welcome. Could I ask you to introduce yourself and your book, please?
Hi, I'm Philippa Perry, and I wrote Shrink Solves Murder.
It's such a fun book. I'm having such a great time with it. Before we talk about the book itself, I wonder if we could talk a little bit about said fascinating career, your journey as a writer, and perhaps some of your other works.
Okay, I'm an artist and I'm a psychotherapist. And as a psychotherapist, I wrote 4 other books. Couch Fiction, which is a graphic novel about a case study, which gives a lot of theory sort of under the radar, so you can absorb theory without it being too much like hard work. That's Couch Fiction. Then I wrote How to Stay Sane, which is a sort of self-therapy book, how to do therapy on yourself. And then I wrote my bestseller, which is called The Book You Wish Your Parents Had Read and Your Children Will Be Glad That You Did. And that book is about the importance of the relationship between parents and children. And then I wrote The Book the book you want everyone you love to read, which is another deep dive into relationships. And I thought it was about time I had some fun after those serious books. So I've written a comic novel about a shrink, because I am a shrink. And so it's easy for me to write about shrinks. And she solves a murder. Now, I'm not giving it away by saying she solves it, because that's what you want from a murder mystery. You want it all nicely sewed up so you can feel like that all's well with the world. And I hope this book comforts you in that way too.
It absolutely does. And it sounds like your work in psychotherapy has laid the groundwork for a lot of the themes in this book as well, but you treat them with a very light and funny hand that makes for an absolutely beautiful read. I wonder, I guess having the background in psychotherapy must be a real advantage when you are writing about motives and secret motives and relationships between people in a closed system. Where did the book start? Was it a character or a character type that you wanted to explore, the nature of the crime or the setting, perhaps? Where did it all begin?
Well, I think the setting's important because it's set on the South Downs of England, and I've got a little house there. And so I'm very close to that countryside. So I wanted to set it there. And I think my main motivation was I wanted to invent a group of characters that you want to spend time with, either because they're funny or they're naughty or they're wise. And I wanted to show what relationships can be like, not necessarily, love relationships, but relationships between neighbors and friends and how important they can be. And I just wanted you to enjoy being in those relationships as though you were in the village as well.
It is a very cozy village to nestle yourself into.
I mean, not that cozy. There's some terrible goings on.
Yeah.
I mean, there's the people next door keep having orgies, for goodness sake. So it's not all sweetness and light,
No, but the landscape seems really nice, so.
Well, it's quite desolate. The trees are bent over in the wind and things like that. So there's a hint of menace there, I think.
Yeah, and I think that is what makes that dichotomy of cozy mystery is that there is darkness for sure, but you get to take comfort in, I think, the relationships, as you mentioned, and also, as you mentioned, the assured outcome that after you tread through this darkness, things will be wrapped up to some degree for you.
Yeah, I mean, not for the poor bereaved people of the murder victim. I
Um,
mean that some things can't be solved.
Yes, absolutely. So could you talk a little bit about shaping Patricia Phillips, who's at the investigator of this story? How did you draw on your own experience to shape her outlook, and her relationship with her patient, Henry, who the mystery centers around?
Hey, she's a very experienced psychotherapist, Patricia Phillips, and she's got the same initials as me, Philippa Perry, and that's just a joke, really. I like to make people think, is this based on a real person or not? But she isn't like me. She's a lot grumpier than I am. She's a woman in her 60s, and she's never taken any HRT. Now, what estrogen does for you is it's a bit like the love hormone, and it makes you a lot more patient and a lot more loving. That's why we're given loads of it by nature for bringing up our children. And then once we hit the menopause and our children are supposedly grown up, we think we don't need all that nice estrogen anymore. And so people can become a little bit more direct after that is removed. And she's grumpy, and she probably needs a hip replacement, but she's too bloody minded to actually admit that to herself. So she's always wincing in pain. And so she doesn't like people behaving stupidly. So she gets very cross with that. And yet she's a very good psychotherapist. She's very empathetic. But I think what her grumpiness does is that she doesn't entertain anybody's neurosis either. She won't be having any of that. She cuts through that. She's probably quite a challenging therapist to be in therapy with. But having said that, I think she's a pretty good therapist and gets it right most of the time. So she's a lot grumpier than I am. She's probably who I'd quite like to be if I dared to be that grumpy. It's permission to a lot of women out there to speak their minds.
Oh, absolutely. I did wonder too if, I would probably be grumpier if I let myself be more honest about how I was feeling in most situations.
Yes,
So,
of course. We're just so nice as women. That's the trouble. I
yes.
take HRT, so I continue to be nice. I should come off it just to see how grumpy I can get.
Yeah, for science. So I'd love to talk about your approach to depicting the victim in a mystery here, Henry. I find it really interesting to have to write a character through their absence, and in a mystery where, they now exist like in the memories of the living. So how do you build the life that happens sort of before the story picks up? And were you already aware of the themes that you wanted to explore when you were shaping him?
Yeah, I wanted to explore the theme of why perfectly sensible, reasonable people get into terrible relationships and how they think this time it will be different. So why does somebody who's very bright and's got a nice family and a good job, why does he shack up with someone who's horrible to him, who's unreliable, who makes him feel bad about himself? And in Henry's case, without giving too much away, we find out it's because although he has got a great family with his mother and his stepfather, his father was absent and was never very interested in him. So to try and put this right, Henry keeps having relationships with his gay man, with men who are emotionally absent. And Pat is sort of pulling a hair out, trying to make him see this. We start actually with poor old Henry's dead body at the bottom of the cliff. But because it's a modern day novel set in now, Pat has Zoom recordings of all their sessions. I think they've only had about six sessions. And so she can go back and see what has she missed. Was he suicidal? Could this really be a suicide? Or it's another way of looking like, could there be foul play? And if so, who dished it out?
Hmm. It's really interesting to me. I felt slightly therapized when Patricia was talking about Henry's relationship patterns and how relationships can be so much about trying to correct a past wrong or about that magical thinking that like maybe if I had done this differently, it could have turned out this way,
Yes.
and
Maybe it's all my fault, and if
yes.
only I was better, then he'd be in love with me or whatever.
Yeah, because being in control and wrong is better than being
I just want
powerless.
I just want to show you that we've been joined in the Zoom by my cat, Kevin,
Oh.
who is very significant because I did base a very important character in the book on Kevin.
Oh my gosh. I have a question later about who your favorite character is, and one of mine is David because I love a cat with a people name. I've named all my cats people names. And he's such a also like a really beautiful grumpy mirror for for Patricia in some ways.
Yeah, they are such a good couple.
Yeah.
And they understand each other perfectly. Other people miss Dave. Other people don't quite get him. You can see it's a bit of a forewarning of things to come. The fact that the police officer doesn't understand Dave. The fact that Pritchard, who's Pat's best friend, has a sort of rupture and repair with Dave early on in the book. And when my sister read the book, and she said, I knew when you introduced Dave at the beginning, he was going to play quite a part. And indeed he does. Yeah. I do like to put a little bit of what you call it, foreshadowing in the book when I'm setting it all up. Like, I think the very first line in the book is, don't go so near the edge. It's Pat shouting at tourists on the cliffs. And she goes, don't go so near the edge. These cliffs crumble. And I hope that is setting up the whole novel, really.
I do love that too, especially when it's so subtly done that you only notice after the fact as a reader. It's a great.
There's a lot of forewarnings, so you can go back and get them. Yeah.
Mhm. Um, did you have a favorite character to write, a favorite resident of South Downs?
Well, my favorite character of all is Pritchard Knowles. And and Donna Braddon I like very much as well. These are two very significant people in the book. And I've actually got two best friends near where I live in the South Downs. One is called Richard Coles and the other one is called Lorna Graddon. And so I've put them in the book, but they're obviously not them. I've just fictionalized them, but it's just to honor them as my dear friends and neighbors, really. And I quite like doing that. And my real friend, Richard, he's got this sub personality who talks about what road he got on to get anywhere, or he knows too much about engines and goes into too great a detail. He's one of those people, when you ask him about something he knows about, he'll empty his whole file of facts on that subject, but he's a dear. He's got these irritating habits, like he laughs like a seal and things like that. But he's an absolute dear, and he's sort of a solid friend, even though he's irritating. And with Donna Braddon, she's a little bit of, Pat has really met a match. She's met another grumpy woman, and they begin with massive clashings, and she's one of the suspects for Pat as well, because of a planning permission dispute that Henry, the victim, was going to file a objection to this planning, and so it would be very handy if Donna got him out of the way. So she's one of the suspects, but she's a character I'm very fond of.
I one of my marginal notes was that I need a Pritchard in my life, actually, someone who is irritating, but who irritates me in the right directions, to get done what I need to do.
But when you get home from work, he's already in your kitchen using all your stuff and cooking you a meal that you haven't asked for.
Yeah,
But it's just what you want.
absolutely. So this is a question I always have for mystery writers. When you were starting out writing, did you have a firm sense of where the mystery would end, or were you sort of landing the plane as you were,
Well, I knew it wasn't going to be obvious.
Mm.
So I knew it was going to be someone we hadn't suspected yet. And I kind of knew who it was and why it was and what was happening. But how I was going to get there, I had no idea. So I had to let the characters work that out. And what I'm particularly pleased about is, yes, Pat does solve the murder because, you know, she's used to seeing the stories underneath the stories people tell you, but also because she doesn't do things alone. She's a bit of a grumpy loner, but she needs relationships. And she, you know, she gets her daughter to help. She gets Pritchard to help. She gets Bev in the village to help. She gets the barman to help. You know, all these things. She couldn't have done it alone. And I like to say that we can't actually do anything alone. We always need help. And that's just one of the, you know, themes I wanted to get in there. It's about the joy of relationships as much as anything.
You know, and I think a mystery like this is a great avenue for exploring that. Something I love about mysteries is that they do provide you insight into a closed system or a town or, you know, a family, something like that. And as you learn more about the characters, you also learn more about the place. What I think is also interesting is that, you know, when you have an investigator like Patricia who can see under the surface of what people are consciously saying, you get to explore that tension, you know, between people and within people, you know, that push to
Yeah.
tell the truth and that push to cover it up too.
Yeah. And I think I sort of mirror that a bit, or foreshadow that, if that's the right word, when I get her talking about Instagram, because she lives near an Instagram beauty spot and people are always Instagramming there, which, you know, does turn out to be quite important for the plot. And I like how she tries to work out the reason for why people wants to Instagram, and it's not the obvious reason. You know, she thinks it's about belonging rather than about showing off. So I you know, I just like putting all that sort of thing in.
Yeah, she's a great observer of her world, and it's great to spend time inside her head, even if it is like a little grumpy in there, because she's very funny as well, and her observations are just so entertaining.
It's quite interesting us agreeing that she's grumpy, because I've done a lot of talks about this book around the country and to people who've read the book as well, and quite a few old ladies say, I didn't think she was grumpy, which I really like, because I just thought, oh, I really have hit the spot with who my readers are here. This is great. In fact, one of my best friends, Suzanne, said to me, I didn't think she was grumpy at all. And Suzanne is one of the grumpiest people I know. So that was very jolly.
Wow, it's like a Rorschach test.
This character on.
I mean, to be clear, it's aspirationally grumpy for me. I do wish I could.
Grumpy is a great phrase that sums it all up really well.
Do you think this is a character that we'll spend more time with? Do you have more books about her on your horizon, do you think?
I have got book 2 in the planning stages. I'm doing the timeline. I'm doing the post-it notes. I know who does the murder. I know who's ordered the murder and all of that. And again, I've sort of set it up in this book, because in this book, we've got a member of parliament who I keep referring to as our member, which is actually how the member of parliament was referred to in a book called the Diary of a Provincial Lady by E.M. Delafield, which was a book written in the 40s. And I love that book. So I sort of like to reference books I love. And the member of parliament is always called our member. Anyway, our member is going to have he's just in the sidelines in this book, but he's going to have a starring role in the next one.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk about this book, and I am so excited for the next one. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this opportunity to talk about it, and I hope everyone enjoys it. I had a lovely exchange this weekend with my local farmer who has got the book and has started reading it. And she says, "It's me, isn't it? Pat's me, isn't she?" So that was so nice that the local farmer was reading this book. I said, "It's set on your land." She says, "I know."
Oh, that's so lovely. Yeah, it is a celebration of a community as well, which is it's really beautiful.
Thank you. And
Well,
thank you for having me on your podcast.
oh, you're absolutely welcome. And thank you, listeners, for joining us. Please check out Shrink Solves Murder. By the time that you hear this, it'll be out in the world. So head to your favorite bookstore or library or website, wherever you like to go for your books. All right, everybody, it is time to close this chapter. We'll see you next time.
It's time to close this chapter of Turn the Page. Join us for the next episode.